Welcome back to another episode of Locked In. Tonight, me and Rev are here to look at Jaden Davis, Michigan's newest addition to their roster at quarterback, especially with J.J. McCarthy leaving and a few other boys in the portal. They're going to need somebody to step in and take that role, and they have a few options, but this is their newest addition, who I don't know if will start this year, and I'd say not, but in the future, you could potentially see him on a football field over in Ann Arbor. This guy, we're gonna be watching his junior highlights, as that's what he has out, and they are honestly, that's his better year than his senior year. He had his senior slump in high school, so this is gonna be his best year in high school, and the only film that we do have of him going into Michigan. Rev, is there anything you'd like to add before we get into the film?
Yeah, senior slump is just light. It's just a couple differences and a few numbers here and there. It's barely any different. He threw a couple more interceptions, had the same amount of touchdown passes, a few less yards and completions and whatnot, but still good years. Obviously, on the screen, you can see his numbers for his junior year. He threw 6 interceptions this year. He threw 9 in his senior year. But talking about Michigan, obviously there's a big question mark. Who's going to be playing quarterback for them? Losing JJ McCarthy after winning a national championship and having a really good career at Michigan. And Michigan's got a couple options. They have a couple on roster options. We'll probably end up talking about them as we go. And then obviously there's still a question of maybe a portal quarterback. They didn't get any in the early window, as far as I'm aware, but the late transfer portal window does open on April 15th. And I think it closes on the 20, I think it's like 14 days or something like that. So near the end of April, it will be closed. So they might have an opportunity to search for a quarterback in that window if they're not happy with what they got on roster. And by that point, they would have gone through spring practice and spring game. So that they'll have a lot more idea what they have at that point. But for today, we're going to be looking at their incoming freshman here who has good numbers and decent film. I think both me and Chance, we've already been through it once. We're gonna react to some of the things as we go and play this. We have some thoughts on him, but he's solid. He's a solid quarterback. There are just things about him that don't put him in the elite tier, at least in our eyes. There might be one or two plays that are an exception to that rule, and that's what I would hope to see. We don't have his senior film on his huddle, so I would like to see if maybe some of those things have changed at all. But we'll get into it so you guys can kind of see what we're talking about.
Just going into it, this guy is a genuine pocket passing quarterback. I think that's something you look for as Michigan, somebody who can stand in the pocket, throw balls. He doesn't really make any plays on his legs. He's not that mobile at all, but he has a lot of touch on every ball he throws. He can throw deep balls. He can throw across the middle. He can throw anywhere you need. It's just he always has touch on it, and sometimes a little too much. Um, Said he underthrows some things here and there, but I'd say the biggest thing that you don't see on this film is what you'd point out, which is him just ripping a ball. There's not much juice in any of his throws as we'll go through this. We'll only go through a few minutes, but he has one or two that has some juice, and I think we'll show you one, but it's later on. Not much juice on any of his balls, but great touch passer. He can throw the deep ball, and he can throw to anywhere on the field that you really need. And of course, he can roll out and throw balls really well, which is
Mm-hmm.
something that you saw J.J. McCarthy do at least once a game, every game this year.
Yeah, he's very impressive on the run. He's not a runner, but he does make athletic plays throwing the ball where he'll move around in the pocket. He'll sprint out if he needs to. Even sometimes a couple plays in this film, the pocket will collapse and he'll kind of move around a little bit and just make some crazy throws, even while being dragged down. Right there, he's being hit and made a great throw into the very corner of the end zone. Now, he had some good receivers to throw to, and there are multiple times in this film that you will see them make excellent plays going up to get the ball, making contested catches. But that's not a massive knock as long as it's not all the time from a quarterback. If his quarterback can trust his guys and they have good rapport, that's a better throw right there. He does hit that guy on target. It's a little bit quicker, but he does have really great trust in his receivers. Clearly, they work a lot together. They have good chemistry, and he throws it up to let his guys go make plays. It's not necessarily a problem as long as it's not something that he banks on all the time. and he does make all the throws. He just floats all of the throws. And it's not a massive I think you might notice per se when you're just watching his film. But when you compare the kind of ball that he throws with other quarterbacks that we've looked at on this channel, it just seems to be a little bit slower getting there. Part of that is his windup. He, as you can kind of see from the back of the field right here, he starts that ball low. He doesn't bring it up. He doesn't have a high point release. Now that's something like you've seen Tim Tebow do that. And you see other quarterbacks do that too. And I think as we have gotten on further, more quarterbacks and more quarterback coaches have kind of allowed that to go, just because if that's how they learn it and they're throwing great balls with it and it's within their rhythm, they don't want to mess it up, so they just let them do it. But typically, when you see that, it's a slower release. It's not gonna be nearly as quick of a trigger as you would see a more standard arm path and a standard release, because he has to do that whole wind. He winds that ball back and then he flips it out. And on top of that, the release, he just has a ball that hangs in the air a little bit, and it again, it's not massively noticeable, and it he clearly is able to throw all over the field, and he makes really good. Most of the time, he makes the right read, but a lot of times you will notice that that ball is just hanging for an extra half a second more than you would like it to if he I mean, if it could bring that down a little bit more, it would make it feel like he's a lot more of an elite of a passer than I feel like he is. That doesn't mean he's not a great passer. He's got a good ball. He has a good touch, like Chance was talking about. He's really good at lofting those things in the corners of the end zone on the sidelines. But when it comes to he throws down the middle of the field, but a lot of the times when you see it, it hangs. And against not the best opponents with good receivers, that's fine. But when you're going up against some of the best DBs in all of college football, which he will be, uh, that is where the question comes in: is does that come back to haunt you? It might not. It might not be as much of a problem as we're just talking it or making it out to be, but it's still something to look out for because it's just not the zip that you'd be used to for an elite pocket passer. But he's got a good ball, and a couple of these plays like that one, the ball does get there, a little bit quicker. And at some point, I'm going to skip to one play that's at the very end of the film because he does zip it through.
Yeah. I if you want to go find that real quick, I'll say this guy is just not that polished as you've seen other quarterbacks such as George McIntyre, even Ron Puglisi. So I mean, there's a few more, but he's just not as polished, whether it be his footwork or his throwing motion. But yet he's still a very good quarterback and
Mm-hmm.
does fit in with the Michigan way.
Yeah, and again, I just want like we saw that one right there, and here's another one where he's on the run a little bit. That's a great play. That's a good ball. He does get it into a very tight window. He extends that thing, so he has great ability. So he has most things that you want to see out of a quarterback. He normally does make the right read and throw to the correct guy. It's just that strange arm path and a little bit of a hanging ball that we keep talking about. But I'm gonna skip down here. This is the play.
Yeah, and you'll see him bring that up above his head. His throwing motion's different in that one.
Let me see if I can.
He still brings it from his hip. He's throwing from the hip, but he brings it up, gets that 90-degree bend in his elbow, and throws how you're supposed to throw as a quarterback.
And I mean that was a very tight window, and he got it in there quick. It's a great throw. I mean, this guy has one underneath, one over top, only with 2 yards separation between both guys. He sees that, he makes a great throw, and one of those where receiver had enough time to catch that ball, try and make a move, defender misses, and he's off to the races. So I wanted to highlight that one. I think there's two others in the film that are somewhat similar. He had an out route that he threw very, very similar to this one, where he still had that wind up, but he happened to get his arm higher into the air. And you would see that 90-degree elbow that I got to pause it at. And he zipped it through. So he definitely has the ability to do so. Just when you watch a lot of this highlight tape, You don't see him doing that a lot. And there's a lot of a lot of film as we were talking, and furthermore in this one that we're not going to show you just because it's a lot of the same. It's him having so much touch, those receivers have to slow up a little bit in stride, or they have to go up and make a contested play, which would not have necessarily had to be one if he has a little bit more zip on the ball and throws it with a little bit more timing. Now, his arm path being the way it is, the fact that he is so accurate with it is actually very impressive because a lot of times that can get you off of a rhythm when you're trying to throw to receivers that you have set steps, set timing with the quarterback's mind. That's obviously taken into account in the way that he throws because a lot of the times he does, he's on target. He normally throws fairly on time. But again, there's just that like half a second. This is a very big nitpick, clearly, because this guy's a good quarterback and he's going to be able to succeed. It's just, is it already better or is it going to get better? And if it doesn't get better and he does hang a ball for that extra half a second, is it going to come back and haunt whether if he's playing at Michigan or if he goes somewhere else in the future, whatever the case may be, is that going to be a difference of enough for that he's going to have to overcome a new struggle that he might not had to have in his past playing high school ball? So obviously it's a nitpick, but it's still a question. It's one that we wanted to point out because while this is a good film and he has plenty of major highlights and really good touchdown passes, he does a great job in the end zone. I think that's honestly his biggest strength. When he's in the red zone or throwing into the end zone, he can hit a lot of really tight spots, he just bombs them into tight spots over defenders' heads and into his receivers' arms. So he's a great threat in that way. But we wanted just to bring up that one little nitpick because it could result into something bigger. But again, this is a big time player. He's got a lot to like at the quarterback position, and even though you don't see him in this film maybe one time utilize his legs to actually run the football to make a play, he can move around in the pocket. He is athletic enough to extend plays, make things happen, and he's great throwing on the run, which obviously watching Michigan, JJ McCarthy, he was fantastic at that, running out on a sprint out and throwing the ball on a rope on the sideline. He did that against Ohio State and Washington, I think Alabama too. So in the three biggest games that he played last year, he had some major plays on the sideline like that. And the same would be true for Jaden Davis. So this is an exciting guy. It's interesting to kind of see how the spring is going to work out for Michigan with him as one of their major options, who is he's already in the building. He's in the quarterback room. So this is the first guy that we wanted to look at for Michigan's possible quarterback of 2024.
Yeah. With that being said, a lot of potential here, and I hope to see Michigan use it in the future. For me and Rev, it's it for us. All y'all out there, stay locked in.